life goals are simple for me. It's number one, did I raise thriving kids? Now, the word thriving does not mean rich kids. It means thriving. It means, are they happy and enjoying life and have a positive outlook on life, which I can check that box, at least for now in their lives. I mean, who knows what happens, but right now, absolutely thriving. Second piece, professional legacy. Have I touched lives that help people be better at the goals they want to achieve? So I'll go back to my startup. Of the 5 people who reported to me, all of them either ended up being CEOs of companies or managing partners in big consulting firms. Every single one of them, super successful. And my legacy is always leave it better. Find people, leave them better. And then finally, freedom defined is the ability to do the things I want to do at the level I care about doing them and have the time to do them. And time is actually the most important factor in that little equation, because lots of people have lots of money, but their lives are so time compressed that even when they go on what most people would define as an amazing vacation, they're distracted by work. They're on your phone, like you talked about. They're answering emails. They're answering text messages. They're calling people. They're not in the moment, or they've created this bubble around themselves where that bubble they might as well not even be in this amazing environment, because they could be anywhere. They're not actually experiencing that environment.
Welcome to Midlife Remix, the podcast that explores midlife transitions and how people have reshaped their careers and lives to focus on what truly matters. I'm Stephen Miao, a coach who helps guide professionals through these often challenging but rewarding pivots. Today, I'm thrilled to welcome Larry Kihlstadius, a true master of reinvention. From his Naval Academy roots to pioneering in recruitment, Larry's story is all about leading with purpose and resilience. He embraced a minimalist, vagabond lifestyle, redefining success through experiences and relationships. His journey is packed with lessons on courage, adaptability, and living intentionally. Let's dive in. Larry, how are you?
Hi, how are you? Good to be here, Stephen.
A lot of my listeners are trying to do a transition, or maybe they are realizing that the status quo no longer works for them.
Right.
How did you redefine your why, and then how did it lead you to live the way that you live today?
So that's interesting. I think early in my life, my why was 100% around freedom, and it what freedom is shifted. The definition of freedom shifted. Freedom in the beginning was, I wanted to pick places, and I call it a true north. And true north starts with, what do I love to do? What will someone pay me for? And what am I great at? Where those 3 things intersect on a Venn diagram, that's what you ought to chase. And that's what I did chase. I would pick things that seemed exciting. I was willing to take a risk. I was willing to leave something that I was already doing well to go do something that seemed more exciting or would raise my skill set level, or frankly, in some cases, would increase wealth. But the whole goal of wealth was not stuff. It was not how big a house can I get, how many cars can I have. I mean, I went through, I think everybody does when they get their first big boy paychecks, and they kind of go through that. I got to have a Porsche, that kind of mentality. But I quickly realized that had no sustaining value for me. And I was just as happy driving a Jeep as a 911. It was about freedom to choose what I wanted to do, freedom to not worry about when's the next paycheck going to come in if I don't pick the right thing, or, hey, if this fails, I'm in big trouble. I did make a couple choices where what I went to do failed. I like to think it wasn't me failing. I know one of them wasn't for sure. One of them maybe had a little bit of failure in there, but it's okay because you learn the life lessons from it and you move on to the next adventure.
Yeah. There's so much to dive into. For me, and I think about this quite a bit. In some way, I think that there is no failure, even though there is a lot of failure, because when the failure actually is what makes me grow. Whereas, successes don't really make you grow. You just like, oh, I did so great. I did all these things great, and in reality, probably it was, you had less to do with it than you thought you did. But failures really punch you in the face and you're like, oh, I don't want to do that again. and
That,
then you
yes.
change. I think a lot what defines you are various pivots that you've made in your life. Could you talk about some of those and why you made them, or what gave you the courage to do them?
All my friends were shocked that I chose going to the Naval Academy. I was sort of a peace, love, and Bobby Dylan kind of guy. And so they were very surprised that I would make that choice. So that's the first pivot. And it was a very intentional pivot. I looked around and said, look, we have no money. We're dirt poor. I mean, we're Salvation Army Christmases and government subsidized housing. And Naval Academy pays you to go to school. Not only do you full ride and they pay for everything, but they actually pay you. So that was the first pivot. Another interesting pivot, I went Marines, which again shocked everybody because, well, they're kind of hardcore. I never came across as very hardcore. I wanted to lead people who wanted to be what they were. And you learn that leadership lesson. If you really want to be a great leader, it is all about the others. It's the people you lead have to be your first priority. And also a general said something really interesting to me that I never, ever forgot, and it served me well in life. And he said, there's always the 10%. And what he meant by that is there are 10% that just don't get it, that aren't going to be able to serve the cause. And as a leader, you have to be able to decipher who the 10% are and take action accordingly to serve your cause. And that translated into corporate America. When I got to corporate America, I realized, first of all, everybody wasn't into their cause. A lot of people are there for very, very different reasons, all balanced different reasons. Some people are there for the paycheck. Some people are there to try to get promoted. Some people, frankly, I'm not sure why they were there. They chose a company at random, I think. Yet, understanding that if you want to be a leader in corporate America, somehow you had to get people to lean into a cause that you wanted to achieve. And this whole concept of build trust, build relationships, again, and peers mattered. One of the lessons I did learn is I wasn't a good peer in my first couple of assignments in corporate America. I had a CEO who pulled me aside and said, I just want to give you some coaching. And I said, okay, this is going to be interesting. He said, your peers don't like you. I was like, wow, okay. And I was like, why? And he said, because you keep trying to be the best and you're not being a teammate. Sometimes it's not is about you being the best, it's about the team, and you're forgetting that. And that was a really interesting, hard conversation that I took to heart. And I realized I got to be a better teammate. Also, it led me to realize that you never know how you look through other people's eyes, right? That you're never going to know that. You can do 1,000,000 360s. It's really still not going to tell you the whole story.
A lot of very competitive people are like that. Right? So the part of their success is because they're so competitive. If you can't lead by example, and if you can't bring people along the journey, and you can't be vulnerable, people are not going to like you, and they're not going to follow you if they don't like you.
Exactly. And I think then continuing forward, becoming a better teammate, and really understanding, and this is the big lesson of this, is relationships matter. Relationships are going to be the key to everything. You watch what happens. It's not necessarily the skill sets. It's not how smart you are. Mostly it's the relationships you build. Now you have to have some level of intelligence, some level of skill, but relationships will trump everything. So how do you get relationships? To your point, Stephen, trust. And the only way to gain trust with people is being vulnerable first with them. You have to build that trust. That builds the relationships. And also, by the way, interestingly enough, it allows you the license to hold other people accountable. When you have a great relationship with somebody, you can actually hold them to a higher standard of accountability because they know you got doing it for them. You're doing it to help them win as well. And that was, if anything, the secret to success in my corporate career and in my startup. Find great people, let them know you trust them, which means, by the way, you got to let them do their thing. You cannot be a micromanager. You cannot second guess everything. Let them do what you're hiring them to do. Give them the coaching, keep them accountable to outcomes, but also let them do it. Let them do it.
That's one of the most important leadership qualities, is to give people the space to be able to operate. So you hire people that are qualified to do the job. You tell them what you want the outcome to be, or create a box so that they know how to play within that box. But then within that box, they need to be able to do however they want to do it, so that they feel agency. And I think a lot of leaders are so paranoid, and because of that paranoia, they micromanage people and they don't get the best out of them.
It's exactly right.
Mm-hmm.
So I have this model I call the leadership champion model. And I said, okay. And a lot of this is some of the early work of Jim Collins as well, because one of the things I loved about Jim Collins, he wrote a story about how he always starts with trust. And he had someone challenging him. He was teaching a course at Stanford, and one of the MBA students was challenging him and saying, well, I'm sure you can't trust, you got to earn trust. People have to earn trust. He goes, no, I give trust. Because if you're a leader who says people have to earn your trust, you're not going to develop the depth of relationships with most people. When you start with trust, you're going to actually develop way more depth with way more people. And oh, by the way, will you get burned? He goes, yeah, once in a while, my trust gets me burned. Way overcompensated by the incremental effort that people give me when I've given them trust, and the level of ownership they give me. And, you hear CEOs talk about, why don't people have an ownership mentality? Well, because you don't trust them.
Yeah.
Right. You put all this kind of secret spy scope stuff on people to analyze if they're really doing what they're supposed to be doing, or you micromanage down, or you have this command and control leadership style. That's not a winning recipe, right? Not a winning recipe. I think the other part of that is, because you start then with that why are we here? What's the cause we serve? And then you lead to the how. So, the what and the why, what are we going to do? Why are we going to do it? And then you go to the how stage and you collaborate on the how. That's where you trust people. How do you want to get this done? Let them define the how. Now, to your point, you'll put some guardrails in on it. You'll negotiate that. That's a conversation. That's a two-way street. And eventually you come up with how we're going to do it. And then the great part of this is then you can say, okay, if you were working with me, Stephen, I'd say, okay, Stephen, so what does winning look like? We just defined the what and the why of the cause we're going to serve. We just defined how we're going to get it done. So what is a scoreboard? What does winning look like? Because people behave differently when there's a scoreboard. You can go out and you ever, play tennis or whatever sport you like with somebody, pick up basketball, and, you're shooting around or you're hitting the ball and there's no intensity, but boy, okay, let's keep score. Going to keep score. There's a whole shift there that happens. There's a little bit of intensity that happens. So I want them to define what winning looks like. Now, I will, again, edit as necessary to make sure we're doing the right level of what the scoreboard looks like. But if they own that scoreboard, it's different.
So let's get back to your current why, and maybe what are the lessons that you think from your own life that people who are in this midlife transition could learn from? Specifically, I want to talk about your courage, unless you don't see a lot of the things that you're doing as being courageous.
So I don't see them as being courageous, most of them. There's a couple of things where I know I took risks. I don't want to be in a situation where my career or my self-worth or my self-wealth were tied to things that I could not control. Don't undervalue yourself. If you have certain skill sets that are valuable in the market, don't sell them short. Ask for what you're worth and be willing to walk if you don't get it. And then third, continually improving, continually looking for what's the next skill, what's the next skill, what's the next skill. I don't know of anything else that gives you more value in your life to create your own path and not be beholden to others. I think about for entrepreneurs is also what I would say I did well. Don't cheap on your team. Invest more money than you thought you would in the team that you're going to do this with, because that will make all the difference.
Yeah, I think that goes back to a lot what you're saying is invest in relationships
Yeah.
and invest in people. So not only investing in finding the right people, but then also compensating them appropriately. So it seems also that a lot of your ability to pivot and to move away from maybe the expected was because of the relationships that you've had to be
Right.
able to venture into those.
The idea here is all based on COVID. So COVID hits and the world changes, goes on its head. I said, I want to build a life of freedom. I'm not going to own anything. I'm not going to lease anything. Skinnied down my life. Now my ex-wife has family mementos in her house, things that, you would normally keep in a house. But these are, you can see behind me, corporate furnished apartments. I can go anywhere in the United States with 2 weeks notice, no lease, on a credit card, and everything I own can fit in 8 bins in the back of an SUV. So time in Palm Springs, time in Minneapolis, time here in Atlanta, going back to Minneapolis for the summer. Freedom of life, freedom of time. I've kept my schedule now where I won't work more than 15 hours a week. It was originally 20, but that ended up being, more than I wanted. So now it's down to 15, and guarding it jealously, guarding my time, guarding my time. I think there's a lost art to doing nothing. There's a lost art to just going out and watching the world and looking at the world and observing it and realizing the wonder of things. There's this assessment I do with all my clients called positive intelligence. And Shahzad Shamin, who is a Stanford guy, his backstory is amazing, but it's about the saboteurs in your life. It's this assessment is to determine how you're wired, how you became you. And what I realize is so many people are busy trying to serve their saboteurs, their hypervigilance, their hyper rational, their hyperachiever, that they just don't pause. They just don't take a pause and really breathe the air and use their senses and experience the wonder. Think about, I don't know if you know in your life any children right now, they're in that ages between 3 and 5 years old. Think about the wonder that a butterfly gives them. Think about, I was walking in the park this weekend, and this little girl could not just get over her joy of throwing leaves in the air. It's like, she was joyous. And I just looked at her and I said, that's what we miss. We miss our wonder.
When I walk down the street in New York City, at every traffic light, people stop and look at their phone. So even for those, I don't know how long the traffic light is, say 60 seconds, they can't just be with their own thoughts. And I think that technology has really hurt us in that way, that it has provided us such an easy escape from reality. And we're probably more in this escape than we are in reality. And I think that that's part of a lot of the unhappiness that a lot of people are facing, because they're not communicating with each other. They're not letting their thoughts come in and see what's happening to them. They don't understand their feelings anymore, because so much of it is driven by external drivers, as you nicely said.
I mean, Stephen, that's so genius of what you just said. It creates comparison, and comparison is the enemy of happiness. There's always somebody prettier. There's always somebody has better clothes. There's always somebody has a cooler car. There's always somebody doing a better adventure. Always. It doesn't bring you happiness to see that. What brings you happiness is finding your own adventure.
Yeah. This comparison is I think is fundamentally what drives people today. They want a bigger title. They want a bigger yacht. They want a yacht, right?
Yeah.
They want a plane. They want they want the 911. They want, all the things that we've talked about, instead of actually being courageous enough. And it, as you said, it shouldn't really take courage, but I think in nowadays world, it does take courage. Yeah. A lot of great things you said. Our conversation was very inspirational for me, and I'm sure for our listeners as well. Thank you so much for your time.
I
I
appreciate it.
greatly appreciate it. I know you only. I don't know if you consider this as part of the 15 hours or not, but if it
No, this
is,
doesn't. No,
then I'm
this is fun.
grateful.
This is fun. This is in the fun category.
Well, Larry, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.